Set. I'd like to call the June 23rd City Council Redevelopment Agency meeting together for the City of San Carlos. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With that, we'll move on to item number 2, which is any changes to the order of the agenda. Council, any requests for changes to the order? Staff, public, any requests? Okay. Agenda stands. We'll move on to item number 3, which is a report from closed session.
There's no report.
Thank you very much. And with that, item number 4, council communications and announcements. Any announcements?
I have quite a few.
Please. Councilmember Grocott.
First announcement, I just wanted to give recognition to one of our own, a citizen of San Carlos, Willamette University, Sarah Zernan, and she went to school here locally and is from San Carlos. She's a cross-country runner, and she was named the National Female Athlete of the Year for the NCAA Division III athletes. And so I saw that in the paper and just wanted to give her that recognition from the dais. The second item is a question for staff in some regards. I had talked at one of our meetings about the widening project at Holly and had asked that we might be given an update, and I'm wanting to know when we might see that on our agenda.
I don't have a firm date yet. I have talked with Mr. McTarry about bringing that back. He was looking for more detailed plans before he brought it back for your review, but it is on our timetable to bring back as soon as possible.
Okay, very well. Thank you. And then as a, I forget what the term is that we use, but for liaison is the term I'm looking for, of the council for the GPAC committee. I think we got some sort of correspondence from Al Savay on this, but I just did want to point out that I got a letter from Andy Klein is his last name. He's the chair of the GPAC. That they did have a meeting, and in regards to their presentation to us and our direction back to go ahead and have more meetings and so forth, they have responded to that, so they're going to add 5 additional meetings to their schedule. They're going to add a speaker series, and the notification of that will be public on when those speaker series will be taking place. Those will be public meetings, so folks can watch out for those. And they also assigned 2 GPAC subcommittees to look at the housing element and the climate action plan specifically, with one subcommittee for each of those topics. And they are not scheduled again to meet this summer until sometime in August, but they will have a community workshop on the proposed land use alternatives, and that's scheduled for July 30th at 7 p.m. at the Hiller Aviation Museum. And if there's anything staff would like to add to that, welcome to do so. I don't see Al here, so.
Al is on vacation this week.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
But I think you've summarized it pretty well. We've heard from the committee that they'd like to have some additional meetings, and we rearranged some of the budget dollars that we have for the consultant to allow that to occur. So to my knowledge, we're on track, I think, and proceeding still on schedule.
Very good. Okay. And again, if the public is wanting to follow that, they can look at the city's website to keep up with when those meetings will take place, I imagine. Also, as ad hoc committee member for the council on the Transit Village, I just wanted to point out to the council that we are getting, I know I am getting quite a bit of correspondence, Mr. Priscilli might be also, from what used to be known as the Loyola Association, and now they call themselves the Greater East San Carlos Community Group or something. I'm not sure exactly what what their title is as a group. But they do have some strong concerns about the Transit Village proposal. And I won't go into all the details of that, but I expect we're going to see some organized, I'm not going to call it opposition because they don't call it opposition in their letter. They want to, as best as they can, work with the city, but they do not feel like their concerns are being seen right now and addressed. And so I think they are meeting with city staff in sometime in the near future. Is that correct, Mark?
I think there have been a number of different meetings between representatives on the east side, city staff, and as well as the project applicant.
Okay. So I wanted to point that out to the council because if you see some things coming through and some political dust-up, I don't want you to be surprised. And I feel like as a member of that subcommittee,
I think we're all getting the emails.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if
Sure.
you can't always tell
Sometimes
if
they're
you're all getting
individually
it.
addressed.
Right.
Right.
The next item has to do with I attended the Emergency Services Council meeting, and it was announced there that there will be a regional earthquake exercise on October 28th, 2008, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is one of the tabletop workshops, and I suppose our police department and fire department will be involved in that exercise.
The fire department has a person now who is assigned that responsibility, and so they are the liaison for that activity.
Okay, so they'll be a part of that. And then also, they announced that Disaster Preparedness Day is going to be recognized, and there's going to be an event at the County Expo Center, and the date on that event is September 13th. And so if folks want to attend that, you'll get a free gift and a plug-in telephone. You can get CPR training. There'll be some films there by USGS and some other things going on. So if folks are interested in attending that, that's on September 13th. And then one other thing I wanted to bring to the council's attention. I'm sure we're all aware of the retirement notice that we got from Parks and Rec Department. And so I wanted to ask if we might, as a council, I'm not sure how to do this, but if we could have perhaps a joint meeting with the Parks and Rec Commission and have some input into what we want to see as a council and as a commission for the direction of the parks. And I think that's a pretty major position for us as a city, and give some direction to the city manager on the kind of person we want to see hired, the types of things that person might be taking on in the future. And then also, I think we might take this opportunity of this retirement perhaps to look at the cost savings we might see from that, and perhaps we could, at least for the fiscal year, instate some of the programs we just cut, like the tennis court lighting and some other programs that are just in the Parks and Rec department. So if the council's interested in that, I certainly would be interested in something like that. Do we want to see it? I guess what I'm asking is perhaps we could bring that as a discussion item for our agenda for our next meeting if the council's interested in pursuing any of those ideas.
Council, like to staff, do you have any response to that? And council,
Well,
can either consider it now, or consider it for the future.
From staff's perspective, we have a pending resignation. There is some time, and that Mr. Weiss has indicated that he would stay with us through December of this year. But unless I'm provided direction otherwise from the City Council, the intent, because of the importance of that department and the budget assigned to that department, the intent would be to fill the position. And we would proceed to do a recruitment and fill that position just like any other vacancy that we wanted to or felt appropriate to fill. Certainly, the council can provide alternative direction if you choose, but otherwise, it would be my intent just to proceed as we normally would.
Okay. And is the announcement public? Because I feel like we're being a little cryptic about the announcement.
Yes. I mean, Mr. Weiss has given me a written letter indicating that he intends to retire.
Just for clarification, Director Barry Weiss of our Parks and Rec Director has indicated that he's going to be retiring at the end of the year. Do I have that right? Great. So I guess it's a twofold question. One is if the council's interested in a joint meeting with Park and Rec to discuss the filling the position. And the second is agendizing a discussion about the position. Is that, I'm not sure I understand exactly.
Well,
what you
the
want to
second
do.
part would be, two things that we would agendize under that. The topic would be, Parks and Rec Director and two subcategories. One would be perhaps a meeting between us and Parks and Rec Commission to look at perhaps some of the qualities we may want to see in a new director, some of the because of some of the things that we might have as ideas for that department, and we would be looking for an individual with certain strengths in order to manage that department. Not that I'm not into micromanaging the city manager's position. Don't get me wrong, but I think it is a big department. We can see it. It's a big part of our budget. They do a lot of things, and we might have some ideas for the department. I know I do. And I've talked to one other council member, and it's difficult to talk to one other council member. I'd like to have the liberty at a meeting to talk to all the council about some of those ideas, and I would see it as a disrespect to our commission if we didn't invite them to be part of the discussion as well. So that's part one. Part two is, yes, maybe we look at the strength of the current staff we have, sans Mr. Weiss, Barry Weiss. Perhaps we can make a go of it for the remainder of that fiscal year and look at reinstituting some of these programs with cost savings.
That would be an idea you'd like to
discuss. That would be a second item.
So I guess my suggestion would be whether or not council meets, maybe like a half-an-hour study session that Park Rec Commission could attend prior to a meeting, something like that.
Exactly right, yes.
The only problem I have with this is, and again, with all due respect, I mean, I just, should we, every time, and again, is it just Parks and Rec, or should we do, if our police chief retires, or if our fire chief retires? I mean, I only bring that up because they're all important positions.
Sure.
And I'm just concerned, it's not like we don't have, I mean, I think if we have input personally to give to the city manager, I think we should give it. But all of a sudden, you're going to have 5 Park and Rec people and 5 city council people. Now we're going to have 10 opinions of what the next Park and Rec person should be. Meanwhile, Mr. Weiss is, I mean, unfortunately, the way this recruitment goes, and I'm sure we're all aware of it, if you put the ad out today, it takes at least 90 days to 120 days to get responses back. Am I correct? I mean, even if you did it today, I'm just worried about the sequence. And here we are. We'll come up to January 1st and go, well, we just don't quite have that. We're not quite sure what we want yet. And I'm just worried about that, again, of that whole situation. That's all I'm concerned with there.
I mean, I think it's going to take 4 to 6 months to fill a position of that nature, and I'll need to make some decisions with respect to whether or not we do it, or the kind of recruitment that we do for that position. I think really the basic question, though, is whether or not the city council wants to revisit the structure of the organization with the idea of maybe recreating that department or that function within the city. If you want to have that discussion, we would put it on the agenda.
Okay. Other council members, opinions? Whether interested in agendizing something like that? Or a study session?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think from my perspective, people are fairly passionate about Parks and Rec, and it's an important position. It's worth talking about. So I'd be in favor of a study session.
Yeah, and I'd also say I think what's been done in Park and Rec in the last 10 years has been exceptional. With our budget reviews just in the last month or two, Park and Rec is going to come under extreme pressure under how we deliver services. And I think it would be a good time not to get involved at all with the interviewing or the hiring of the person, but we do have a Park and Rec Commission. Let's use them, get their ideas. Let's get some of Barry's ideas. Let's get some of our ideas and set 2 or 3 major goals or shifts that we see for the Park and Rec department of the future. And then when we interview, we'll be able to evaluate the skill sets of this person or their experiences in initiating some change. Again, what we've done up to this point is perfect, but change is good too, and it'd be nice to be involved with that.
Okay, so based on council's disposition, it seems like, I just want to remind council, we've had really thick agendas all year long. I think we've barely gotten out of here by 11 o'clock. We have a lot of things that we've had to table and move on. This is obviously important, as many things are in the city. So with the nod of the council, I would suggest we make it a half-an-hour study session prior to a council meeting. I invite Park and Rec Commission and try to get to our points relatively quickly, get staff some feedback from their volunteer commission and the council, and then let staff move on that.
Through the mayor, I would also just like to echo what Randy Royce said regarding, first, the quality we've had, and then the next point that he made, that getting some input from also Mr. Weiss, the outgoing, I think would be, just to send the message that he is welcome in providing some input into that.
Are you
process.
kidding? Yeah, Barry.
Was he here tonight?
You're retiring. Congratulations on that decision. No, Barry's been amazing. Absolutely right. Want to make sure we're clear about that.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right. So are we good like that? Any other announcements?
Nope.
Okay. Councilmember Royce?
I'll pass this week. How about that?
Okay. Councilmember Ahmad?
I have just a couple of quick ones. The Chambers of Commerce for San Carlos, Redwood City, and Belmont host an annual leadership course. Councilman Royce and I were both students of this course. They are calling for applicants right now. If you have any questions, please send me an email. I would also want to report as liaison function the Peninsula Congestion Traffic Relief Alliance. Good Lord, we need a smaller acronym for these guys. You can go to commute.org. Started talking about federal funds being made available for safe routes to school. I've tried to plug into them. I'm looking figuratively at our acting Public Works Director to say I would love to chat a little bit more and see if we might be able to plug into some of that federal money. Lastly, 2 weeks ago, there was some passionate discussion about lights. I made a comment that I would be happy to take an additional look and see what I could find out. One of the things I did find was that the Washington Nationals, the Colorado Rockies, and the San Francisco Giants have all installed solar systems for their lighting. I do want to thank the Nationals and the Rockies, and I want to thank Director Barry Weiss for helping me follow up with the Giants. Apparently what everybody's been doing is putting up solar panels, selling the power back to the grid, and getting revenue neutral. I've got some additional feelers out to PG&E and some additional programs to see if these materials can be procured, and perhaps we can do these things on a revenue neutral basis, preferably without having to go back and look for money that we've already committed in our budget this year. And that's it for me.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted, council, we all need to be careful. It's council communications and announcements. We want to be careful on bringing up budget issues at this point, just because we should notice them if we're going to talk about them. Just, again, note of caution. Vice Mayor Grisilli.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And then I attended a couple of things on the weekend that were great things to be a part of. There was at Carlmont, the San Carlos and Belmont chapters of the American Cancer Society held a Relay for Life to benefit the American Cancer Society. And so I helped kick that event off. It had to be 110 degrees at 9:30 in the morning, and I was the only one wearing pants, but this isn't about me. It was actually about a bunch of really dedicated volunteers, some of which are survivors. Certainly everybody's affected by cancer. It was an inspiring group, a dedicated group, and it was a 24-hour relay held up at Carmont that Belmont and San Carlos did jointly, and it was a great thing to witness. And Councilmember Royce, I understand, did a talk there that Saturday evening as well. So I appreciate your involvement and all the involvement of all the citizens of San Carlos and Belmont. It was an inspiring morning for me. And that also, I think we had most of the council attended the Vertical Challenge this weekend at the Hiller Aviation Museum. Boy, it was a really, really special event. It was the first time that I had attended it. The Red Bull helicopter going upside down was of particular interest, which I got an occasion to see twice after being up at the race in Infineon yesterday. But the airport, the Hiller board and the Hiller Museum, they do so much for the city of San Carlos, and I know that several members enjoyed the weekend, and we have a lot of aviation enthusiasts. It was just a really, my daughter and I got to, and wife got to come around the helicopters, the grand marshals of the event, which was a lot of fun. But it was a super event for the city of San Carlos, and was well handled all the way around. And any other council members want to come on that, you're welcome to real quick. But it was a great event, and we thank the Hiller Aviation Museum for their efforts.
Mr. Mayor, it would be nice, I think, if we just put something in writing, or perhaps a letter from the mayor, and thanking them for their putting on the event and putting us on the map. so to speak.
Yeah, shall do if council's agreement to that. We'll do it. All right. Well, thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to item number 5 tonight, which council appointments. And the first thing we have is item 5A, recognition of the Youth Advisory Council 2007-2008 scholarship recipients. And Jerry Fujimoto is going to help us with that, I believe.
Want to introduce it and then I'll come down.
You want me to go down there, Christine?
Yeah, we're going to go down.
Okay.
Jerry, do you want to use this microphone or that microphone? Yeah.
Well, good evening. San Carlos Youth Advisory Council fundraises throughout the year with their middle school dances, and they choose to give scholarships on an annual basis to students that give back to their community. And it's called the Outstanding Community Service Scholarship. And tonight, we have several recipients here.
We'll call up people one by one if you can come on up. And I guess, did you say we have a check as well?
Yes. Jerry has
Look at
one.
that. Oh, you're keeping the checks? Yeah. First, we'd like to recognize Brian McKee for Outstanding Youth Scholarship Community Service. And if I mispronounce your name, when you come up, please grab the microphone and pronounce your name correctly. Natalie Soliard. Is that close? All right, you can deliver that check. Let me give you the Wells Fargo address on that. That was a joke. Thank you very much. I'll work on it, yeah. Speak into the mic. And last but not least, Christina Hunsiger.
Just to let you know, Veronica Sester could not make it tonight, and she's a graduate from Notre Dame High School, and she received $500. Brian McGee from Sarah College Prep received $500, and Natalie Soulard from Carmont High School received $250, and Christina Hunsinger from Sequoia High School received $250. The students must be a resident of San Carlos or the 94070 zip code area, and they must be a current junior or senior in high school, have a cumulative 3.0 GPA. Most of them had, I don't know how they do it, but 5.0s, and at least one letter of recommendation. So congratulations to those students. Right now, okay. Right now we will have the retiring San Carlos Youth Advisory Council members.
So, Jerry, just to be clear, we're moving on to
sorry.
item number 5B. That's fine. This is consideration of appointing Youth Advisory Council members for the 2008 through 2010 term and recognize retiring Youth Advisory Council voting members.
Okay.
Please.
Incoming Youth Advisory Council members. We have 4 this year, and we'll start off with Henry James Zattering from Central Middle School. He's on a 2-year term. Henry, why don't you come stand right here? Henry attends Central Middle School and will be in the 7th grade next school term. He is interested in planning and creating a recycling program at our sports outdoor facilities and feels that he could contribute to the Youth Council a positive, energetic influence to help make the Youth Council a helpful and informative tool for the people of San Carlos. Welcome, Henry. Robert Wallace. Robert is involved in the San Carlos community. He's a Boy Scout, football player, theater, and is a PAL member. He would like to plan a Senior Citizens Community Service Day where volunteers help the seniors in San Carlos who have projects they need, such as cleaning their yards, shopping, and helping around their homes. Robert wants to assist the city of San Carlos to become better known and talked about for the opportunities they offer the youth of this city. Robert Wallace also has a 2-year term. Welcome, Robert. Kevin Harris, 2-year term. Kevin will be attending Menlo College Prep in the fall. He is an athlete playing baseball, golf, and soccer. He is also very involved in the San Carlos Children's Theater with many productions under his belt. Kevin has been on the Terra Linda Leadership Group and would now like to represent all youth in our city. He is very interested in working with City Council to find or build a suitable location for a full-time arts center for the community. Thank you. Next, Previn Nadu, 2-year term. Previn has been a Youth Advisory Council member at large for 2 years. He is passionate about his commitment to the youth of San Carlos and will work hard to give our youth a voice in the community. He also would like to work towards a place where youth can enjoy the arts. With budget cuts in the schools, the arts such as dance, vocal music, and visual arts are being cut back. He would like to ensure that our youth have an opportunity to express themselves through the arts. These are the 4 incoming council members, Youth Advisory Council members. City Clerk Christine Bolin.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to appoint these candidates, Mr. Zadarin, Mr. Wallace, Mr. Harris, and Mr. Nadeau for the 2008 through 2010 Youth Advisory Council.
I'd like to second that.
We have a second and a third. Christine, roll call.
Councilmember Ahmad?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Royce?
Yes.
Mayor Lewis?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to swear these gentlemen in.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, don't be afraid. This is our standard oath for all of the officials in the state of California. If you can raise your right hand. And the answer will be yes, just so you know. Do you solemnly swear that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the State of California and the Constitution of the United States, that you take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you're about to enter? Okay. And so if you can sign your oath over here.
Mr. Mayor, through the chair, I wanted to also congratulate these gentlemen. I was honored to be on an interview committee interviewing these gentlemen, as well as others. There were 4 or 5 other young people that we interviewed, and it was just wonderful. The quality of the young people who want to be on the Youth Advisory Council was spectacular. And congratulate again these 4 gentlemen. But all the folks that we interviewed were qualified, and these are the ones that were selected. So I just wanted to make that point.
Great. Thank you.
Did you want to do it? Okay. Recognition for retiring Youth Advisory Council voting members. The following Youth Advisory Council voting members complete their terms of office on June 30th, 2008. Matt Taylor, 2-year term, 2007 voting member, 2008 chair, plus member at large, 4 years for a total of 6 years of service to the Youth Advisory Council. Matt Taylor. Jordan Robb, 2-year term voting member, secretary 2007, vice chair 2008. Jordan. Lauren Vogel, 2-year term, voting member, secretary, 2008. Aaron Bucina, 2-year term, voting member, public relations officer, 2007-2008.
I just want to point out it says until June 30th, so you guys aren't off the hook for another week, okay? And we're going to have a meeting every night for about 4 or 5 hours for the next week. Thank you very much. Let's give them one more hand. These guys put a lot of effort over the years. Thank you.
So tonight I know is for recognition of the 4 of us and all the work that we've put in, but there's someone here tonight that I feel quite often goes unrecognized for all that she does for the Youth Advisory Council. So I just want to put a big thank you out to Jerry Fujimoto. For me, and I'm speaking for the rest of us, she's kind of like a second mother. She kind of always makes sure that the welfare of us is always excellent and always watches out for us, and if we ever need advice or anything, she's always there. And she's always helped us put our best foot forward and taught us some crazy life lessons, and I really do appreciate it, and it's made me more than half of the person I am today, so I really do appreciate it. So if we get a round of applause for Jerry Fujimoto.
Thank you, Matt.
I just wanted to say how impressed I am with their goals, the incoming Youth Advisory Council members' goals. I think we ought to all get behind them and help them achieve those. I think it's exciting to see such young people wanting to dedicate their time to important jobs like that.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'm sorry. Yes, Jerry?
What she said.
Excused. Yes. Excused. Of course. Yes. If you would like to be excused, absolutely.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thanks for being here.
Stay here.
Wait a second. We're about to say something fascinating. Come back.
We know that the Gilligan's Island reruns are really exciting, but...
Gilligan's Island is a different generation.
Yeah, okay.
It never even made it to Nick at Night. Gilligan's Island.
Really?
Yeah.
Not even TV Land has it.
Donna Reed made it. Gilligan's Island.
Gilligan's Island didn't?
Mikhail Snavely didn't make it. Sorry.
Can we make a motion to protest this to Nick at Night? Okay,
I don't
thanks.
have kids.
I appreciate it.
All right. I'm sure we will move on to item number 6A, which is a presentation of proclamations to 4 newly certified green San Carlos businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Brian Moore, Assistant City Manager. As you know, a year ago, San Carlos was selected as one of 6 cities in San Mateo County to pilot the Green Business Program. Starting July 1st of this year, the program will be expanded to the rest of the cities throughout the county. Each of the cities was challenged to come up with at least 3 businesses that could be certified during that 1-year period, and the other cities have certified from 1 to 4 businesses. I think it's worth noting that businesses in San Carlos, with the help of the Chamber of Commerce, have done a great job working with staff on this program, and we have by far the largest number of green businesses through the June 30th deadline. Tonight we're adding 4 more to our list, so we now have a total of 16 certified green businesses in the city. And what I'd like to do tonight is, again, invite Mayor Lewis to come down, and we will introduce each of the 4 businesses to receive the award, and we'll bring them up and give them a little community recognition. We have certificates from the city, county, and both State Senator Simidian and Assemblymember Ira Ruskin. So our first green business tonight is our first green dentist, Heldon Lau, DDS, and Lisa Baugh, I believe, is here to represent Heldon Law.
You know, with your permission, Ryan, I'd like to call up all of the companies because I'd like to read some of the proclamations.
Absolutely.
And so let's call up each
All right.
company.
All right. Then let us introduce Intero Real Estate, Jasmine Kukovic, Dave Bluette, and V. Wallace. We also have the city's first green jeweler, Jeffries Diamond and Goldsmith, Jeffrey Stern. And finally, our first green web designer and UI specialist, Claudia Case from Alden Case Enterprises.
I've been trying to get this one right because each time we have these impressive proclamations, and I'm not sure I've gotten it right yet. So I'd like to read them, though, actually, because I think it's quite an achievement, and I know we all appreciate, we all take a lot of pride in not only this program, but the fact that we have such responsible, not only community members, but business community members as well, and that you take an interest in the community. It's so important to the fabric and character of who we are. So all of these are going to read similarly. So what I'd like to do is read the content of each one of them. The City of San Carlos has partnered with the San Mateo County PG&E, California Water Service, South Bayside Waste Management Authority, and the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to bring the Bay Area Green Business Program, which has certified over 1,000 firms as green businesses to date, 2 firms in San Carlos. And whereas the Green Business Program is a successful partnership of the city, the county, local utilities, and agencies that assists, recognizes, and promotes businesses and government agencies that operate voluntarily in a more environmentally responsible way. Whereas to be green certified as a green business, participants and their firms must comply with all regulations and meet program standards for conserving resources, preventing pollution, minimizing waste, and helping businesses improve and implement green practices for their operations. And whereas you all have successfully completed the extensive Green Business Checklist program, review and certification process is now, you are now certified green business operating in the City of San Carlos. And that's from the City Council and from the City of San Carlos. I also have recognition for each of you from the California State Assembly. It's on behalf of the Assembly, signed by Assemblymember Ira Ruskin. And this is in honor of your commitment to protect the environment by operating your business in an environmentally friendly manner, and for your certification as a San Carlos Certified Green Business. And I also have from the California State Senate a nice certificate of recognition that in honor of you being recognized by the City of San Carlos as a certified green business. And I would also garner that the Board of Supervisors will probably have a certificate on its way because...
Yes, we have a certificate for each of them in the envelope, and also a big green sticker that we expect to see in the front door of your business starting tomorrow morning.
So I think what's important is it is really recognized across the California State Legislature as well as the Board of Supervisors and the city. It's an important thing you do, and we appreciate it. And thank you very much, and congratulations tonight. For Alden Case Enterprises, there you are. Thank you. My pleasure. And for Jeffries Jewelers, here you go. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. What do we have left? Here's Intero Real Estate. Good. And did we do it? Do we have everything? Is that? We've done it. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
No. All right. And with that, we will move on to item number 6B, which is a presentation of proclamation declaring July as Parks and Recreation Month. Director Weiss, would you like to handle that? Shall I present this to you? How would you like to handle this? Okay.
Mayor Lewis and members of the City Council, it is my honor to stand here at least for another 6 months and address you. And July is Parks and Recreation Month across the country, and each year we've been fortunate to have the City Council declare July as Parks and Recreation Month here in San Carlos. And as it says in the proclamation, Parks and Recreation, our vision is to create community through people, parks, and programs, to preserve our natural resources, to support more productive workforces, enhance the desirability for locations of businesses and families, and stimulate tourism revenues. It's also, we strengthen community image and sense of place, promote health and wellness and human development, and help young people develop and grow into healthy adults, and help adults continue to grow as whole human beings. And so we have the request before you to declare July as Parks and Recreation Month in San Carlos.
And I am holding a proclamation where it talks about the Parks and Recreation profession in California creates community through people, parks, and programs. And our parks help in preserve and protect the natural and cultural resources of California. Promotes strength and community image, sense of place, increases cultural unity, promotes health and wellness, reduces healthcare costs. Parks and Recreation fosters human development, helping young people develop and grow into healthy adults, and helping adults continue to develop as whole beings. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the City of San Carlos urges all residents to enjoy and help promote the benefits derived from our Parks and Recreation Department, which provides something of value to everyone, and recognize July as Park and Recreation Month, dated this 23rd day of June, 2008. Thank you very much, Director Weiss.
Wait, there's more?
So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we
Yes.
approve this proclamation or declaration, whichever.
We actually don't need a motion.
We don't need a motion.
We don't? Oh, I thought it said we did, but okay.
You okay then? Greg, do we need a motion on that?
No.
Okay.
No? Okay.
All right, with that, we will move on to item number 6C. And Barry, would you like to handle that, or would you like me to come down and?
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, you have before you a proclamation declaring the week of July 14th, 2008 as Parks and Recreation Foundation Week here in San Carlos. As you know, the Parks and Recreation Foundation has done a admirable job of raising funds for the new Burton Park Playground, which, for all those at home watching, is under construction, and we do anticipate opening for play in August. And I will defer to the mayor for reading the proclamation, but we have with me to receive the proclamation Debbie Denton, who is one of the members of the Board of Trustees of the Parks and Recreation Foundation of San Carlos.
Great, thank you very much, Barry. I'll just read a portion of the proclamation here, where the Parks and Recreation Foundation of San Carlos supports the city's Parks and Recreation Department's vision and mission and has the opportunity to accomplish more than public funding would allow. The foundation supports San Carlos Parks and Recreation with its primary purpose to secure, purchase, manage, and invest privately raised funds solely for the benefit of the city's Parks and Recreation Department programs. The foundation operates as a private legal entity separate from the city and its Park and Recreation Department, and the private nature of the foundation also provides the added advantage of dedicated donor services. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the City of San Carlos urges all residents to enjoy and help promote the events derived with the assistance of the Parks and Recreation Foundation of San Carlos. And we recognize July 14th through 20th, 2008 as Park and Recreation Foundation Week. That's a good cookie. All right. And with that, we will move on to item number 7, which is public comment, for which I have 2 public comment slips. Patricia Potter.
Hi, I'm Patricia Potter, resident. I got a call on Saturday from a what do you call those guys? It's not marketing, it's public opinion poll for how I felt about having a half-cent sales tax on the ballot in September or in November to go to San Carlos. And so I answered in the affirmative. I thought it was a good idea. And then I thought more about it, and I thought, well, what I really was interested in was our effort to put a fee or a tax on the utility bill, because if we do that, then we can encourage people to save energy, and we'll get the funding through the utility bill, and we'll have a win-win situation. So the thing that concerned me about the sales tax is that it seems to promote more retail in the terms of big box retail, because I know the Economic Development Group is interested in luring Target and other stores in here, and I think the citizens have already explained that they don't want that. So I just want to go on record as saying that I will support a half-cent sales tax if that's the only alternative we have. I would much prefer to see that as a utility so that we can encourage people to save on their energy. And I also will hopefully find Henry, who wants to do recycling with San Carlos Green. I do have, this is the introduction to a book written by Stacy Mitchell. It's entitled The Big Box Swindle. It's brand new. It talks all about the downfall of a community with big box versus supporting companies like the green companies that we supported today, but entrepreneurial, locally owned businesses and the importance of supporting that versus subsidizing big box. So I'm just going to give you this.
Thank you very much, Ms. Potter. Anything else? Are you good? Thank you very much. Pat Bell.
At Bell, San Carlos. I want a Target store, and I'll pay the sales tax or the utility tax or both. I don't care. And I want food scrap recycling, and I want it now. I know you're the board of directors, and government moves slowly and all that stuff, but Mayor Lewis has been known to encourage staff to move quickly. So I'm hoping that you will encourage staff to move quickly on that. What I really want to talk about is the Transit Village. And I'm glad that Matt brought it up. I have no idea what those letters say. I'm not on their mailing list anymore, although I live in what used to be Loyola. And I think it's fine for them to complain about serious concerns. I am fed up with complaints about things that aren't real, problems that aren't real. They complain about the quality of life for the residents of the Transit Village. I talked to that gentleman after he spoke at the last meeting, and I said, well, the people who live on Old County that you're so worried about live next to the tracks. And he said, well, they're 50 feet away. This is right on the tracks. I said, the closest piece of this building has to be 55 feet from the tracks. Well, I don't care. I'm still against it. And they talk about the shade. Well, I went and took pictures of the utility pole and the shadow it casts. And because of the oblique angle, it won't even get to the middle of the street, let alone on their houses. So if they can come up with real concerns that need to be addressed, I'd be happy to hear them addressed. But I am fed up with all these scare tactics. It started out with a lot of door-to-door canvassing about low-income housing and those people across the tracks from our neighborhood and the 50-foot wall right up against the tracks and blah, blah, blah. And evidently some of that hasn't been corrected by the powers that be in that group, of which I'm proud to say I'm not a member. But I would urge them to do their homework, see what it's really going to be like. It's a beautiful complex, and why in the world those people would want to climb over the berm into our crummy little neighborhood is beyond me. I just want to hear some real intelligent discussion on the subject and not all this hysteria.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. And with that, we'll move on to, unless there's any other public comment tonight, we will move on to item number 8, which are consent calendar items, which are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I have a brief comment on 8H. I'll leave it if I should move it, or if I can make a brief comment, I can move the whole thing.
Actually, I have a question on HT, so why don't we just put it off and talk about that one?
Be good.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve items 8A, B, C, D, E, F, and G.
Second.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Ahmad?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Royce?
Yes.
Mayor Lewis?
Yes. And that will move to the end of our agenda tonight, after item number 10. And now we have reports to council, item number 9. And this is a report on core services, if that can be so defined, by City Manager Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. When we discussed this at the strategic planning session, we thought that this would be an easy task. And then we did a little research on, some other agencies that have attempted to do this, and we found that it can become a very involved task indeed. And in the staff report, we've provided you with methodologies used by the City of San Jose, the County of Santa Clara, and the San Francisco Parks Department. Each of them tried in their own way to determine what would be a core service in their world. Some tried to determine the core being those things that are legally mandated. The Parks Department in San Francisco came up with a whole series of things and then actually took some criticism later on for the criteria that ended up with the results that were attained therein. San Jose spent some time talking about it's not about what's important and what about what is not important, and yet it's not something that is I think easy for any of us to say categorically that this is in fact the definition of what a core service might be for a municipality. And so with that caveat, city staff embarked upon the process in any event, but decided to take a rather decentralized process in pursuing that objective. And rather than creating a top-down definition of what might be core, we talked about that at the staff level. But ultimately, we decided, at least within the city organization, that we would use a bottom-up process and let the departments actually determine themselves what they felt would be most appropriately put forward as being core, secondary, and support services therein. And so, using the model that you've seen previously presented by the police department, each of the departments was charged with creating a similar template for identifying core services within their department, pursuant to the definitions and the undeniably subjective criteria that each of the department directors used. Each department director brought that to a city staff meeting, was subjected to some roundtable discussion. Some criticisms, to be perfectly honest, and we went back and we tried again. And so what you've got is a second or third iteration of city staff's best efforts, still, however, being presented by the department director. And frankly, when there were disagreements amongst staff, we deferred to the department director to put forward the core services as that department director saw fit. At one point, I thought I would try to create a singular chart that would identify core services for the city as a whole. Again, that is very similarly a subjective process, and if the city council wants to embark upon that endeavor, I discussed a little bit in the staff report some of the pros and cons with trying to do that. It's simply not black and white in my world after having looked at the literature on the topic. But I think one of the things that is here and might even prove helpful as we move forward with the discussion of the Parks and Recreation Department, for example, is I think now you've got a nice list, at least, of many of the services that are provided by each of the departments. Whether they're core, whether they're secondary, whether they're support. I think this is a helpful tool for us, and I hope that you will find it as a helpful tool in at least having some discussion and a presentation of what the activities are currently within each of the departments. With that concludes my reports, but I would be happy to address any questions that the council.
Well, I will say that even if there's some additions or editorial or some changes in this would be a great thing to put into the workbook we all get when we come on to council, because as a overview of core services, it's a really handy and core overview, and certainly made me like Parks and Recreation alone. It's a vast department, and I think that's what Councilmember Grocott was alluding to earlier. It's probably not to speak for you, but partly a reaction to the depth of which there's Park and Rec, what that covers. It's a pretty amazing amount of stuff. my only, and I'm only going to lead with this so somebody else doesn't take my joke, but the only thing I was surprised to find out is that the fire department doesn't consider putting out fires to be a core service. It was funny, I read through it, and I figured, number one will be put out fires, right? Fire department. Anyway, so. And I was being glib before when I said if we can define those. It never pays to be glib in a political position. But it was just because in the report you were sort of just trying to define a core service was difficult, and that's what I was alluding to. So, Council, questions for staff or comments? Councilmember Grocott?
Well, I talked to the city manager about this, I think a couple months back, and I would just simply say that I come alongside the ideas that core services are those, A, that only government can do, and B, those that benefit everybody in a general sense. So that's the side that I come down on. And for instance, with Parks and Rec, when you look at it, it's fine for the city to provide parkland and open space and the sort of the infrastructure and the type of infrastructure that everyone can benefit from freely, and they can choose to benefit or not, but it's there for them. When you start getting into areas that are specific to individuals or tailored towards certain individuals, then to me you're stepping away from a core service. So again, and I'm not picking on Parks and Rec by any means, but it's a good department to use as an example. If you have a sports league and then they want to use what is provided for the general public, i.e. a sports field or a field, an open field, an open space, if they want to use that for their specific purpose, then that's where I come down towards fee-based. Then you start paying a fee to essentially take away the right of others to use that field while you're using it, so therefore you should pay a fee and incur a cost because you want to use it in a special way for whatever it is you're doing. And that's how I tend to look at it. So I come down on that side, if you will.
Okay. Other council comments?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to acknowledge Mark Weiss and the rest of the city staff for putting this together. I know it was a significant chunk of work, and I appreciate the tool and the additional visibility. I think I'm looking forward to more discussions with council and with staff regarding, to Mr. Grocott's point, what do we see as fundamental core, what do we see as core. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about how we want to prioritize the city and where we want things to go, and this is a great tool, so I just wanted to say thank you.
I just, again, thank you for all the work you did, and as echoing Councilmember Ahmad and Councilmember Grocott's comments of we need, look at these things, what are the core services, and I think it's a great starting point, and more than a starting point, actually. It's way past that, and I think it helps us a lot, especially since we're only, acting as boards of directors up here, so.
Yeah, I'd like to say, actually, Mark and I have had a discussion on this. I think at a future session, I put down some thoughts and some of my experiences I had with CORE. What I kind of related to is an experience that I had in my work life where a corporation had a major piece of corporate overhead, about $275 million. And it's really all these service organizations that supported all the products lines of the company. And we had the same thing. We were basically a big black, bucket of revenues and expenses, or this expenses that provide all these services. And one of the things that we did is we really got into, and we used actually the word core, what were the really primary services that were truly company-wide, things like, of course, the CEO, things like the tax department. And then you got into departments like the public relations department, which, by the way, had about 85 people in it. And you looked at their customer base, and what we changed is rather than that being part of this overhead allocation, their service actually had to be proven, and they had to sell those services as buyers and sellers. And there were product divisions that wanted to use all the advertising and public relations, the one that had new products. There were other ones that had older products that didn't care and didn't want to invest in that. And so we had much more of a customer relationship in giving input to the seller of those services and how to manage their costs. So as it relates to us, and again, just to be very brief, there are areas that we have like in public works and in community development where we could identify a lot of the customers. And we could actually set rates, which we actually do. Setting rates is good. We need to fully cost it. We need to compare those rates to what the market value is for other cities. And I think we could even go that a little further and do a great job. When we get into areas like Park and Rec, there's some of it that we could get fee-based, and yet other items, if you charge to a summer concert series, you might kill it. To charge for a lot of our other recreational programs, I think we'll be able to charge, and maybe charge a lot more. So, and yet Park and Rec, all of it can't be charged out. So I'll have a lot to add when we get to that point on my experiences and really working with one other gentleman. We worked for about 6 months and really came up with a whole new set of rules of seller-buyer relationships and how to make expenses accountable so that if you were spending money, you really reported more to your customer and you had to sell. And if you were part of the corporate and at base, you also had to sell to a board of directors and so forth and so forth. So anyway, more on that later, but I think the work that was done here is an excellent start. When we get into doing the most important things and doing them efficiently, we're going to have to spend some time, and hopefully I'll be able to add more at that time.
Great, thanks. So, nice job on this. Hopefully it fostered good discussion among staff. I think, if nothing else, everybody just discussing what a core service is and core support level and all that is valuable discussion for everybody. So,
I do think it was helpful, and I hope that the council finds it useful as well.
Absolutely.
Through the chair.
Nice, yes.
The question I have, I'm picking up on Councilmember Ahmad and Councilmember Royce's comments. There seems to be a feeling amongst us that we might discuss this further sometime, maybe set some policies for the city based on the discussion, but I don't hear anything being talked about to set an agenda item for that or something in the future. Do we intend to do that, or do we just take this in as information and use it the next time we do the budget? How are we going to use all this hard work that was done?
Manager Weiss, did you have any comment?
You know, I think you could spend a great deal of time debating the theoretical merits of one definition of core services vis-a-vis another. We did that at the staff level to some degree, and frankly, what you see here is the culmination of that. I don't know that we found it to be all that helpful, other than, like you say, being an educational effort on our own part to identify what it is that we do and to give some semblance or order of priority to it. We would suggest that it be used by the City Council in that same manner as we put together programs and budgets in the future. Now, specific to Parks and Recreation, if we put that on the next agenda, I might very well include this description of services just for the information of the Council and the Parks and Recreation Commission in discussing the structure of that particular entity moving forward. It's that kind of use that I see this being helpful with. I don't see it as being something that we would use beyond that, perhaps other than just as a tool for all of us as we put next year's budget together.
Comments? So, yeah, I mean, I agree it's a valuable tool. I think we should use it where possible. I think if the strategic retreat, if we decide that, it's something else what we want to get together and talk about, but it is a great informational tool for us to start to drive future efforts and budget. That's where so I sort of agree with that. But if that's what we have general agreement on at this point in time. And I thank you, Mr. Weiss, for the report. With that, we will move on to unfinished business, and this is item number 10A, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the financial policies.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Jeff Malpe. I'm the City's Administrative Services Director. As part of the proposed budget that was brought forward June 9th, we included some new financial policies. The policies in many ways were designed to reflect past practices of the city's finances, as well as some best practices that exist within government finance. The council felt that they didn't have enough time, June 9th, to fully vet those policies, so we brought them back tonight. We are hoping to have the policies adopted prior to the start of the new fiscal year in July, so that we can include them in the budget as they are recommended as best practices. And we like to put our budget up for awards from various municipal finance organizations that have in the past recommended that we start to include these policies. The policies, just as a general overview, consist of general financial policies, revenue policies, cost of service policies, reserve policies, expenditure and budget policies, debt policies, capital improvement budget policies, and fixed asset and infrastructure policies. During the brief discussion that council was able to have on the policies on June 9th, we were able to incorporate a couple suggestions that the council made, one about how the fee structure was set, and provide some more flexibility in there. The language we felt was accurately described by council as being too rigid, so we've built in some flexibility there, and we've added some additional language about the recommended reserve policy. So I'm happy to answer any questions you've got.
Great. Thank you for those changes. Council, some comments on policies, questions?
I have a question regarding the reserve policy, which is the one that pretty much pulled this thing off the agenda last time and put it back for this time. And the question I have is twofold. Well, maybe not. Let me put it in one way, if I can. Economic uncertainties. We have, so much money set aside, and it can look to the negative to two groups, I think, and the two groups that I could think of are just the average taxpayer says, I don't have that kind of money set aside. Why should my government have that kind of money set aside? And so that's where you kind of get into, well, what's the right amount? I think good fiscal policy is to have something set aside if you can. But I can see the argument of the taxpayer who's paying the taxes and saying, you have money set aside for uncertainties and I don't. And why is it fair for me to pay my tax bill and have nothing, and meanwhile you're sitting on millions of dollars? The other group is those who get money from the city in whatever fashion that is, whether it's our employees or vendors or whomever, and could look at that money and say, well, you've got the money, why aren't you willing to spend it? So what I'm getting down to is having a good definition for economic uncertainty so everybody understands why we have that. And it's not just this nebulous term of, do we address that, or can you address that? And perhaps that gets to the policy of how we use that money.
Sure. I think we can try to put some parameters around it. I do think that there would be a wide variety of potential uses. One of my responses, my first response, of course, to some of what you're talking about, Council Member, would be that, well, the city is a corporation, and we have a responsibility, and I think the public wants the city to be managed in a financially responsible way, and having some level of reserves is part of that. But while people at home may not set aside 20% of their annual expenses, I think we need to keep in mind that when things, if some major event is to happen within the city, a major disaster or otherwise, people are going to be looking not to their own savings necessarily, but to the city to be able to step in, and that would be one opportunity to leverage that reserve. The primary definition that I think of when that reserve was set up was, for example, if we had a major structural fire at the San Carlos marketplace, and it took out the whole marketplace, and so we lost approximately $1 million or maybe more, depending on how widespread the damage was in terms of tax revenue for a year. we would be able to come to you as staff and say, well, we would recommend that you tap the economic uncertainty reserve because we know these businesses are rebuilding, and we can expect a year from now that that revenue will begin to flow again, so there's no reason to start laying people off or dramatically changing the service model of the city for something that we would view as a temporary interruption in the city's revenue stream.
So just to, I think, what Councilmember Grocott is asking for, maybe just to include some examples of what some, examples of economic uncertainties that could be almost parenthetical within the policy, so we understand what the broad definition of that is.
True, and if I may, what I don't see in the document is any, definition of economic uncertainties, and perhaps it doesn't belong in the document, perhaps it's something that we agendize separately and say, we're going to set some policies on how we are willing to spend reserve funding and put some parameters around it. Because to just leave it as it is, like I say, if it's loosely defined, then I see two opportunities at least to look at that and say, well, there's a bucket of money. Let's force council to use it.
And again, sometimes you and I are on opposite sides of different issues.
Are we right now?
Well, I want to throw out a sort of a devil's advocate, if I can.
Sure.
With all due respect, if you only be able to spend, if you define economic uncertainties under these parameters, what happens if something happens that we didn't think about, or something that we really need to use it for? Now, are we restricted because we can't use it? I mean, that's what I'm concerned about. I'd almost like it to be economic uncertainty that the staff and the council will have that opportunity to say, we think this is economic uncertainty, as opposed to saying, are we locked in? And again, maybe that's a legal question. I don't want to the city attorney, are we going to be locked in if we all of a sudden define what it is?
Just to your point, I would also say whatever we define, I understand that for the education of people to say, here are the kinds of things that this reserve funding. But I would always end it with, and other uneconomic.
I just want to make sure we don't lock ourselves in.
Well, and if I may, before the attorney speaks, I would agree with you. I'm not looking for absolutes.
Okay.
I'm looking for may include that type of language.
I didn't mean
to show a spirit of intent to those who might read it, so that they don't get the idea that, again, here's this money, golly gee Moses, let's use it for something else.
Well, I think that the point's a good point, that you may constrain yourself, but the council also is the body that sets the policy. So if a circumstance arose in the future that you felt was strong enough, you could change that policy.
Okay.
But it is sort of a promise to the community, if you will, or a guideline at least that you'd be.
Guidelines are great.
Other comments?
That's it.
Okay.
Good.
Councilmember Rose?
I'm on board for that.
Yeah. So, by the way, Jeff, this is a great document to kind of set standards here and remind ourselves of what we're doing in the area of finance. I do have, though, I want to point out a handful of items just to make sure that we're really want to agree to doing some of this. The first item is under General Policies, number 3, and, of course, the first paragraph makes reference to it, but it always uses the term to maintain and further develop or maintain and enhance services. And with what's affordable and budgeting and so forth, don't mean to wordsmith it right now, but to talk about what I think we need to do is to manage the programs first. Manage means to maintain or get rid of or reduce. To manage programs and develop, to manage existing programs and further develop new programs that provide the level and quality of service required by our citizens within affordability or within the budget.
If you just simply, sorry, to that point, if you just say we will manage and develop programs, you don't have to add, I think, any of that other language. Management, I think, encompasses.
I want to make sure we have the expectation we're not always doing more. Sometimes less will be better. Under
Council nodding to that one, because we'll probably move on.
let me stop on that.
We will manage and
develop.
Yeah. Under revenue policies, item 12, and I just would like to delete this whole item. It talks about using conservatism in revenues. I was a little disappointed in the budget on how conservative we really were on certain items. Generally accepted accounting principles, which are referred to already in item A4, there are pages and pages that describe generally accepted accounting principles, and conservatism is already defined in that. So I would just like to delete 12.
How about if we just deleted the word conservatively?
Yeah, then you're just saying it a second time, whatever. I just think it's a duplicate. But I want to make sure our management doesn't take that to say we're going to be really conservative on the revenues. GAAP makes reference to how you handle both expenses and revenue, and I'm not sure why we want to pick out on just one item here.
Through the chair, Mr. Royce, well, that must be Mr. Devil's advocate tonight.
Sure,
but I really, what I'm good at, thank you. But I really appreciate this because I think we really have to be conservative and on a lot of this stuff because we don't have a steady stream of. It's not like private, and again, you know this. I mean, I'm not telling you. I mean, just speaking out. This is not like private industry where we know or we can estimate sales and all that. You know, we're hoping for some of this money to come through if sales come up. If our economy's good, boom. So I would keep it in there personally, but I mean, that's just my thing. I mean, again, only my, I'm not trying to speak for anybody else on the council.
That's fine, and I kind of respect your opinion. Again, I didn't feel as strongly, because it's in there twice, it means the same thing, but the point of budget was a concern.
Okay.
Item C, cost of service policy. I'd be really interested on my fellow councilmen on this one. We talk about a couple items. One of the items that I want to add, and I really do think we need to look at how we deliver our services, would be something along the lines of evaluate the cost of our services, on an ongoing basis with market pricing, and consider outsourcing and consolidation where quality and pricing can be more favorable or more efficient or whatever. I just want to get that in the mindset. Do we do it? Can we outsource it for a better deal, or can we consolidate it? So when we have, and I'm not here to pick on any jobs, let's say we had an auto mechanic that serviced all the police cars. We could have our own mechanic. Do we outsource it and have a gas station do it? Or do we consolidate to 21 cities and have a repair shop that repairs all the cars for all the cities? I just think we need to really, with all the budget things that are going on, ask the question, are we the best person to do it? We need the service, but I'm not sure we're always the best person, and I would like to add that in the cost of service policies to make that an item.
My only, I like the idea of it. My only concern is getting so specific with outsourcing and so forth. I wonder whether or not, to your earlier point, if we said something about manage the most efficient, effective methodology for providing the service.
I'd be very happy with that.
Well, again,
I mean, because that becomes that's more of a, I think, a policy statement than a specific methodology statement.
Through the chair, Mr. Royce, you mentioned about perhaps you thought 12 was, or B12 was a repeat. Well, I'm looking at E5. And E5 says we will deliver service in the most cost-effective manner. So to me, that speaks to, I don't know, maybe we need to, maybe I'm putting too much in that.
But I don't think it covers thinking outside the box, and I don't think we've done that.
Okay, well.
It's my opinion.
So
I'd be interested in other
point
thoughts.
taken. I understand.
Councilmember Rod or Grocott, you want to weigh in on this one?
Well, first on 12 with the word conservative, I would keep it in there. I tend to like it. And on C3, I think that's what Mr. Royce is calling that. I like the specific language about, I don't think E5 is specific enough. I think just managing cost effective means, that to me points to something internal. And I like the idea of saying, maybe we're not the best ones to do the service. We should look outside.
I agree. If we're talking about service, so I'm just saying if we leave open the particular methodology, we're saying any methodology to provide that service, if it's effective and efficient, I just want to be.
How did Randy state it again?
I said to evaluate our cost of services with market pricing and consider outsourcing and consolidation where quality and pricing are more favorable.
And I'm a little bit, staff, you comment on this, but market pricing doesn't fit for every service we provide.
I mean, basically, we do that kind of an analysis routinely. If you look at the direction that this city has taken over the years, even to the point of contracting for planning services or contracting for public works services, and then reversing that. And we've done it when it seemed appropriate, and we've changed that policy. For this council to say that we're going to go one direction affirmatively now, I don't know that that really is thinking outside of the box. I mean, I think it's something that we analyze whenever a position comes open or whenever we do put a budget together. So from my perspective, I would prefer to keep it generic in terms of what our best practices and policies are, so that we are trying to be as efficient and frugal as possible. At the same time, I do appreciate the council's interest in maintaining a conservative fiscal outlook. You know, I can remember that point in history where I finally had enough money in the bank to get by 30 days. And then, you could fire me tomorrow and I would have 30 days, and boy, that felt good. That's really where the city is. I mean, you're talking $2.5 million. It's, 10%. We're trying to get to 15%. Without any cash, we're talking about 30 days. It's not a lot of money in the bank to cover any kind of economic uncertainty or any kind of pump failure or any kind of fire or any other kind of catastrophe. We need to be conservative. We need to be fiscally prudent, and we need to make these decisions as best we can on a case-by-case basis. I would be hesitant to put something in this document that took us down one policy methodology or another, because I think, frankly, we need to be practical in how we approach each and every problem as it arises.
What do you think? Do you want to go to the more...
I would still recommend what I recommended. I still would like to recommend what I commented on. Because I don't really believe, I think business is tough. I think businesses are a lot tougher with it. I think government hasn't been tough enough on looking outside the box here.
Okay. You want to continue your comments? We'll round up.
Any other thoughts on that one? You want to finish that one?
We're done?
Did you want, should we, through the city attorney, if we want to change this, should we have motions or?
I think
I apologize.
That's right. What I'd like to do is get comments. We can have some discussion along the way, and then we'll come up with a final
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Recommendation with one motion.
I didn't know.
Is that okay, Mr.?
That's appropriate, yes.
Thank you. Sorry. I didn't mean to.
So we had a little discussion. I'm not sure we have a resolution yet, but let's continue on.
Okay. One more item would be when we talk about expenditures and budget policies, number E. I'm very happy with what we have for what we do for the budgeting side and the capital plan and everything that's listed. But I don't see anything in there. I would like to add in there some sort of actual reporting, so that we're actually doing a quarterly or every 6 month a financial reporting of our actuals versus budget. And I don't see that anywhere or our policies. In other words, I don't see anywhere where we're saying we're actually doing financial reporting of actual expenditures.
And by reporting, you mean a verbal report, or are you talking about a written report?
A written report. It doesn't have to be the 1-inch budget. It could be a 2 or 3 page high-level summary of how we're doing 3 or 6 months with revenues and expenditures.
You're thinking quarterly actualization report?
I'd recommend that maybe to start off.
Through the chair. That's actually something that I've commented on when we get projects where we're told there's money in the budget to cover the expense. Okay, how much money is left in the budget? What other things are we looking at?
Right.
Sure.
And staff started to respond to that, I think, which is good.
Right. So I agree with Mr. Royce, though, on that type of policy where we're given a little bit more finger on the pulse.
That's something that we can very easily do.
Mr. Royce, I agree with you 100%.
Thank you. Other comments?
And 2 other minor ones. And look at your advice. When we talk about F9 to maintain or improve the city's bond rating, is it better to be more specific, just to say kind of what the minimal level would be? Because to maintain or improve, I mean, if we started this year at a D, to maintain or improve to a C, to me, might not be satisfactory. Would it be just to say minimal standard level should be, I don't know, what, A? Or what's the level? How do we do it?
Well,
so I just asked you for advice. I'm not sure.
There are different ratings out there, and there are some external market factors that can affect how you're rated that you have no control over, what types of revenues you have, and what types of businesses you have in your community and some things of that nature.
What if we just strive to improve?
But maybe
We have a really good bond rating typically. So,
I understand, but I'm saying if we striving to improve.
Right, yeah, I mean, you're right. Keep in mind, these are just policy directions. These are overall guiding principles.
So I'm happy the way it is. I just throw that out. Just if we ever got in a situation where that wording may not fit. And then the last one is, and this is more of a kind of an accountant looking at it, and of course, Councilman Rickersoli could surely add on this. I would just offline look at the capitalization A where it's set at $5,000. When you capitalize something,
where are you?
I'm sorry, H1. When you capitalize items, most of us accountants know you have to track it, you have to inventory it, you have to depreciate it. I mean, it's really a lot of work. And I know companies generally over the years, every 5 years, they keep bouncing that number up higher and higher to save on the administrative efficiency. So I would just look and maybe just check and just see what the standards are. I think there's generally, and Rebecca may have some input after the meeting on this, might be some benefits to raise the capitalization level because of technology and change. We just write more of this stuff off as we buy it, maybe up to $7,000 or $10,000. And also regarding asset control, and this is my last item, is
the third time you've said. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
Go ahead.
I did not. This is the first time I've said this is my last item. Is that we should add a physical inventory to the asset control. We talk about tag numbers and capitalization rates, but I don't see that there is actually a physical inventory process that we have, and generally I think that would be a good idea.
We do that, though.
Well, I think they do that as part of the audit, but we don't say
part of our audit.
it in the policy.
Yeah.
So we should say what are, and that's a very important policy to control your assets.
Thank you. Councilmember Rahman?
I just had one quick question. Section F, items 7 and 10. Looking at those points where we talk about short-term borrowing and utilizing interfund loans, how does this translate to the notion that we did a transfer from the capital fund to the, if you will, our general fund to balance our budget? Is that addressed anywhere in this policy?
Well, it's really not, because the capital fund from which you transferred that money is part of the general fund. It's a capital general fund extension. We have had some examples with the MPDES fund and the street fund where over the last few years the general fund has loaned those funds money because they were short for one reason or another. And, we are in a position that, should the revenue that's specific to those funds turn around and those funds develop a surplus, they would be in a position to then repay the general fund, including interest. So, but in terms of the capital transfer, no.
Yeah.
Because it's a general fund revenue.
Understood. So, Mr. Mayor, I don't have any specific changes. I just would put out that, just generally speaking, the way we did the transfer, I recognize we had to do it, and that's how we balance the budget. It's not something that I like or want to encourage further, but I don't have any language to put into this at this time. So,
okay, thank you, Vice Mayor Garcia. A couple of quick things, and maybe this is just to help me understand it better. General policy number 2 under A, general policy number 2. It almost felt like these were two separate items to me, and I wasn't sure, which is we will maintain sound financial practices in accordance with state law, and then direct its financial resources toward meeting our long-term goals. Those felt like maybe two separate items as opposed to one interrelated item. Is that true, or are we talking about directing the sound financial practices of state law? Do you know what I mean? It looks as it's referring to the first part of that statement.
Yeah,
it felt
I
like
follow
two
you
separate
there.
statements.
I mean,
and they're both
you
good.
could break that into two items if it reads better.
That would be
to
my
the council.
suggestion, because I think that they're actually not closely enough related to be under the same policy. The second one was under item revenue policies B, revenue policies number 3. We will seek federal and state grants and reimbursements for mandated costs whenever possible. I was thinking we should add mandated and non-mandated costs, because it's a general policy of ours to seek federal and state grants for whatever we're pursuing as a city. Does that make sense? That works?
We could just strike the term mandated and just say for costs whenever possible.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
I was just going to say that we could shorten it by just striking the word mandated and just say in reimbursements for costs.
I'd buy that as well. If you felt it was important to have mandate, then I would add non-mandate. If not, striking it would work for me. And then under C, cost of service policies, this is actually a question whether or not the statement we will consider is a policy. To me, generally, a policy is stronger language than that. So in other words, we will consider requiring large developments to prepare a fiscal analysis. Seems more like a staff analysis with a recommendation and a council consideration on a case-by-case basis, not necessarily a policy to consider that for every large development. Why wouldn't we have to say we will do it if it's a policy?
Right.
Or we...
I think it's providing some direction. It's saying that we want, we were talking earlier about, wanting staff to look at things to at least ensure that they're being looked at. And this is one of those items that, you're right, it doesn't really have any teeth in terms of a policy. You're asking the staff to do something that, quite frankly, they're already doing, which is looking at it on a project-by-project basis.
Right, so maybe it's analyzing projects to see if they should prepare. Again, it was just a language thing for me, so if you felt like you wanted to clean that up. Mr. Rubens?
Well, I think the way I read that is it gives some direction to staff and some increased flexibility with a large project.
Okay.
To use that as something in your quiver in your negotiating position that might be something that you want to do. It might be something you want to give up if you get something else in return.
Okay. I'm comfortable leaving it if that's important in a quivering way. Under D, reserve policies, number one, I actually was concerned as to whether or not we can meet that policy, the way it's stated. And we might want to add, instead of, in other words, it says we will establish, dedicate, maintain reserves annually to meet known and estimated future obligations. I think staff's pretty clearly told us in the budgeting that we can't afford to do that right now. We're working toward that. And I would actually put in language that we will work toward establishing, dedicate and maintain reserves annually, because it's not a policy we can, the way it's stated, it's declarative and we can't do it. And if we enact this and somebody says, hey, it's in your policy, you have to do it, well, we're out of luck right now. We don't have the funding to do it. So I would just say we would work. We
will strive to. We will strive toward, or we will strive to establish.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be as strong a language as possible because I think it's something that we're doing. But I think we just have to just change it a little bit. So if you have a language for that I would say we will work toward establishing, dedicating, and maintaining reserves annually.
Yep, great.
Okay. That's the end of my comments. So,
Mr. Mayor, I was just curious about that point that let's assume that we say, okay, 5 years from now we have the required reserves established, maintained, everything is hunky-dory. Maybe I'm missing the language in here. Is there something in here that says that we won't just go into poor behavior and start to raid the reserves for anything else that comes up to snuff?
I'm not sure how that correlates to
Well, we're saying, okay, we're going to try to establish it, but simultaneously I want to say, if we do establish it, is there any preservation for it?
I would think if we were in that position, we could adjust this policy.
All right.
I mean, literally. I think it's a fair point. I just don't think that's where we are at this point in time.
An example of that, too, is when the library was built, the Economic Uncertainties Reserve was used by the City Council to help finance that project. And then the money repaid over a few years by the city to that fund. So there would be an opportunity if something like, and that was during a very high, fairly high time financially for the city, you may, this council or a future council would have the ability to look at something to be more flexible if they felt the need.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm going to speak up on this one on item 1 because I'm going to I don't agree. Now, if council wants to go that direction, it's fine, but I think the language is fine as it's stated, because even when you cannot do it, you're saying you will. And it's a good goal to have. I think to say we're going to try, then you can always say, well, I'm trying, as opposed to having it there that we will do this. And even if we're in the midst of doing it, because, we're a little weak right now, we still have that commitment that we will do it.
Right. I got to say, these are financial policies we're adopting with this budget, and we cannot meet this policy. And next year, there'll be a new budget, and the policies will come along with next year's budget as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. These will just be
This
an
policy
annual.
falls for 12 months. And, to me, we cannot do this. And we are not doing this, and I don't understand why it would be a policy that we can't fulfill. Just so. And I think that the way I'm reading, that's the end of my comments. The way I read it, we only have one slightly controversial issue, and that's Councilmember Royce's, and again, C3. And do you want to, once you read the language again, one more time, and see if we have council support for including that or not, and then we'll see if we want to modify that language or not. We're talking about additional item C3.
So under cost of services, adding a C3 would be to evaluate the cost of services with market pricing and consider outsourcing or consolidations where quality and pricing are more favorable.
Council?
Works for me. Works for me, yeah.
Well, it doesn't count, so, but I mean, I certainly respect the comment, and I understand where we're trying to go on this thing, and certainly my background parallels Mr. Royce's in a lot of financial things. But I'm always worried about hamstringing this and putting this stuff in, and somebody's going to point, well, you can do this, or you can, and I think as Mr. Rubin said, we can set any policy we want, or Mr. Weiss said, where we can go outside, inside, whatever we want to do now. And sometimes writing it down is difficult, as the mayor just said, when we will establish, which we know we can't do. I just worry about some of this other things, so I just can't support that one tonight.
Question for staff on market pricing. Are you, excuse me, Councilmember Royce, are you suggesting that we would receive market rate for services provided? When you say market price, I'm not sure I understand.
Well, market pricing is probably the wrong term. It means costing of your services. So the auto mechanic would be a good example. You basically price what it pricing or cost. You actually not price. You cost out what it is costing you to provide this service, and then you actually very aware of when I say market pricing is what I mean is you compare what it would cost for us to do it, what would it cost to have someone else do it, or what would it cost to consolidate it and have it, stay within the city, but you consolidate with other cities and have it done. So it's not market pricing, it's always costing of your services.
So it's a cost analysis of service. Okay, so can you reread that with the right language, and then if we get nods, we'll try to include it, because I think what we're working toward here is a motion to include the changes as stated.
So I just say, actually to shorten it, just say to periodically evaluate the cost of our services and consider outsourcing and consolidation where these services can be provided at a more favorable rate.
Who is going to, and again, I'm just trying to think of the practicality of this. I'm in the automobile business, and I'm going, I can do this cheaper than the city can. I'm showing up to Mark Weiss's office tomorrow and says, it's your policy that you got to do this, or you're supposed to do this. So I want to bid on this. Mm-hmm. And by the way, there's 10 guys behind me. They're in a different kind of business, but we're going to come into the city. I can clean this parks cleaner, and I'm trying to be obviously make a huge thing of this, trying to speak to this issue. And this is where, again, I'm not familiar with government enough to know that there isn't going to be a line out the door tomorrow. So,
and it's not all pricing. That's why I say quality / pricing. It's a long-term decision. You don't change this stuff every year. It needs to work for the long term. It needs to be still quality, good services, and pricing.
And again, for me, I think to do cost analysis and manage it in an effective manner is more of a policy direction than a specific direction.
And through the chair, I mean, I guess the reason I'm reacting to that is that it seems to be directly contrary to some of the very decisions we've made in the last couple of years, by bringing planning in-house, by bringing engineering in-house, by maintaining the fire department instead of outsourcing. I mean, those are decisions that we've made because of local control, because of the quality of service, taking into account the factor of pricing as well. But it just seems as though there's a policy shift that's taking place, and I need to be clear as to whether that's the intent or not, whether we're putting something into this document that's to shift our thinking and our direction on a much more...
This does seem to say that the push toward independent contracting, where it's more cost-effective methodology, is a preferred methodology if that's a policy. And that's, to city manager's point, that's what...
Because Mr. Royce, I think if I heard him correctly, he does talk about quality control, do you not, in your statement? And as one who has spoken against independent contractors, my whole point always with independent contractors is you don't get into bed with them and stay there. If you're going to use independent contractors, you have a policy whereby you keep them at an arm's distance in terms of, I can't think of any other term, but friendliness, and letting them get comfortable with you. They always know they work for you. It's a working relationship. They can be put out the door at any time. They can be put to RFP at any time. And in fact, we should do that and have a policy of always keeping them. So that's the loggerhead I see.
Keep this to the point of order. We understand your philosophy on this in general, I think, because you've been great about communicating that. The question for me is what starts to not, and I don't mean unravel in a way that I agree or disagree with anything that's been said, but when you get into it as a policy statements are supposed to be something that stays above this. That's why we talk about managing in a fiscal manner. We don't debate the manner with which we're going to do something. We say that we're going to manage it in a certain overarching way. So that's, again, my concern as we start to get into, we already have, I think, 4 different interpretations of the policy. So that's my concern. But we have 3 council members that seem comfortable with it. I think city manager has said that this feels like a policy shift.
Mr. Mayor, let me just, here's what I heard, was that this is an additional tool and directive to staff to say, we do provide services this way. We should also look for best cost. It may be in-house, it may be out-of-house, but quality and the decision of the council is going to reign supreme when the decision has to be made. So I didn't see that as a specific policy shift. I saw it as an additional tool. That was my interpretation of what I heard Mr. Royce say, and that's what I was supporting.
Yeah, and really what I'm doing, the caption is cost of services. And so just trying to get something in here that shows that we are aware of what some of this stuff costs. And tell you, I've been here 6 months, and I don't think some managers know how much it costs to provide some of these services. And damn it, we better start looking at data, and we better start costing stuff out, and we better start letting our customers know what it costs and ask them if they want it, because we can't afford it.
I want us to keep to the point of order here. So if we can talk about the policy, we're just talking about how specific the language is, I think. It's not the philosophy. I don't think anybody's disagreeing with the general philosophy here. This is a point of just what's the words for this particular thing.
It's just really difficult because it just seems to me that we're going to say if we set this policy, we're going to say to Mr. Weiss, okay, next time we have whatever we have, you better bring both sides. And not saying he shouldn't, but I would think he's going to do that in his job anyway, to identify what the sides are. If he feels something should be outsourced or whatever, he's going to bring it. But this is almost like requiring, I don't know, it's just really scary to me to put this in such language that, I mean, any one of us can then say, well, Park and Rec, I want to have 2 sides of this. Auto mechanic, I mean, where do we start and where do we stop? Are we going to go down 111 positions and say, or services? And that's the thing. And maybe we should. I'm not saying we shouldn't.
There are some cities that do.
I'm just saying, that's fine, but there's only 5 of us, and we only meet twice a month, and we want to meet every night. That's okay, but I'm just real concerned that we're going to all of a sudden now say, well, one of us is going to say, we want to get that auto mechanic fixed. Okay, let's take care of that. and what the time frame is and what the workload and how it, I mean, it's real scary to me. That's my only point. And I know government can be very inefficient in ways, and I know that we need to bring some good management best practices. And I think some of the stuff from private industry is good best practices, but it's just real scary to me when you start putting lines like this. I don't know. It's scary to me.
So if I could say, I actually agree with a lot of what you just said.
Yeah.
But,
no, I know.
But I still would like something there.
I understand. Hey, your point taken.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to put it in the form of a question, if I might, to us and to staff. And that is, let's say we're looking at the budget next year, and the suggestion comes up that we do outsource something as a means for cost savings, because we think as a council we could do that. So say one of us brings it up, and we start moving that direction. Is the position of staff going to be, well, you don't have a policy like that, so why would you go to that direction?
Surprised, but I'll
would you,
refer to that. But
or could, stop me if I can't say this, Mr. City Attorney, could the unions say, well, you don't have a policy like that, you can't go that direction? So somebody
That's never been the case. I mean, we've the council and the staff in the past, without a formal policy, has considered all those options when it's been appropriate. And one of my issues with this, Councilmember Royce, is what is the trigger mechanism to do this? You said, I think, in your statement, periodically. And my concern is, well, would that mean that we'd have to periodically review all the services of the city? Because you're talking about going out and testing the market with RFPs for all kinds of things, and that would be, you'd be talking about an incredible amount of work, not only for us, but for the vendor community.
Can I address that? I think that's really important.
Please.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I'm not trying to make it our job or Mark's job or your job to do this. I'm trying to actually use it as a policy so that when we have managers of these departments, being the manager of HR, being the Park and Rec director, be it the planning or the building department, director, that their mindset is having an awareness of basically cost of services policy, that they are aware of how much it's really costing them to provide the service, and that they are looking around to see alternative business models to provide the same service a better way, maybe cheaper way, maybe whatever, higher quality or whatever, keeping an open mind. So I'm not trying to create a study. I'm just trying to put the mindset that not any of us in this room, but that the managers have that mindset.
So I think there's a couple of things that I'm pulling out of what you want. I'm just because I think we actually all agree on the core issue here. So I'm just trying to get a language that we agree on. But one is for a cost of service proposal to perform a cost analysis of the service and manage and the most effective methodology for performing that service. Is that right? Different methodologies would be in that policy as well as a cost analysis. Aren't those the two key points that you're talking about?
Yeah, but I'm trying not to make it to perform a study that they have to do that. It's that managers, when they're providing services, are aware of. I mean, it's again not creating work a report, but that they're aware of what the cost of their services are, and is there any alternatives?
So then you're saying managers should be aware of their cost of services
and explore other
most effective methodologies.
I'd be happy with general comments. I think might be better, and then we'll know what we're talking about too.
Is that
because there may be many other models that still provide that?
Is that comfortable for staff? That managers should know the cost of services and propose most effective methodology.
Give me the work towards and strive towards caveats, certainly.
Okay.
I'd prefer the generic language, yes.
As well.
Okay. So is that clear enough, what we just said?
I think, yeah. I think that.
Not clear to me. What did we just say? Excuse me.
No, that's fine. We said that managers should be aware of cost of services and explore most effective methodology for providing those services, which is open methodology, whether it's independent contractor, and understand what their costs are and what their cost of service is. I think that's the heart of what Councilmember Royce wants. I'd be very satisfied with that.
I agree.
Okay.
Given what we've just been through, I'm sitting here looking at number 2 and wondering why it's in there at all, because it's rather specific to a certain circumstance, and I'm not sure it's...
That was the question I asked.
You're talking about a policy, and that's I don't know, it's pretty specific the way it's worded.
Okay, that was the question we brought up before. I brought it up as a policy consideration. I think I was satisfied if it's in the quiver as a direction, I'll take it. I mean, I don't object to it being in there as a consideration. I'm just not sure it's sound policy language, but I'll accept it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to stay consistent to the concern about
Right.
policy language. To me, it isn't.
I think that may only be two of us that feel that way. Any other? So if we can have a motion with adopting these, I would suggest with the
amendment?
With the amendments.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the adoption of resolution number 2008-.
36.
Resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos adopting financial policies as amended.
We have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Councilmember Ahmad?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Royce?
Yes.
Mayor Lewis?
Yes. And with that, we will move on to item number 10B, consideration of adopting ordinance number 1399. Mr. Maltby.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Back for its second reading is a ordinance of the City Council which would amend the safety retirement system, tiering it for future hires from 3% at 55, or 3% at 50 to 3% at 55. This ordinance was introduced at the May 27th council meeting, and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Maltby. Questions from council?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 1399, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Carlos authorizing an amendment to the contract between the City Council of the City of San Carlos and the Board of Administration of California Public Employees Retirement System, parenthetically 3% of 55 formula for safety employees.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Ahmad?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Royce?
Yes.
Mayor Lewis?
Yes. And with that, we will go to item number 8H, which was removed from the consent calendar for comment. Not sure we need a report. We can go straight to whatever the question for which it was pooled.
Fair enough.
Mr. Mayor, I just had one thing in the report that irked me significantly. Looking through the report, if you look at one of the diagrams for mounting diagram for radio, et cetera, in here, very clearly it says Cisco Confidential. So here's where I get irked. I don't know if it's the vendor that was sloppy enough to let confidential information out, but I'm also going to wag a finger at city staff to say this, if it is confidential, it shouldn't have been put into the public record. So I'm concerned about the fact that it was sloppy. I'm going to look and assume it's the vendor. If I was Cisco, I'd probably go nonlinear and somebody'd be fired. So that's my comment about that, but I will vote for the motion.
Okay, and I guess to respond to Councilmember Ahmad's comment, the document was submitted as part of the vendor team's encroachment permit. So I believe the staff's position, or our assumption certainly was not, it was not confidential, because as you all well know, and I assume the vendor team knows, once items are submitted as part of a permit, they are public record.
That was my comment.
Hey, any other questions on 8H, please?
Yeah, and let's see here. The only question I had was, and it gets into this whole area of what I would call the electronic hardware litter. That's from cell phone stations to dishes on top of buildings, and now we have these other stations and so forth. And my interest is just making sure that this stuff gets removed. I've been so many places where you go on top of an apartment building and there's 10 dishes up there and 2 are working, and as people move, they just keep adding dishes and dishes, and pretty soon the roof's going to cave in because the vendors don't remove this junk. and it's not attractive. So I do see it was excellent, and maybe the question is for either you or our attorney. It talks about us making, if we make a 90-day, what's it called, written notice at the end of the term that they will remove them. The only question I have is a lot of these communication companies, last 2 or 3 years they get consolidated and they get bought up and then they get broke. So at the end of the day, 5, 10 years from now, would a security deposit paid up front, better on cash flow, ensure to approximate the value of removing this stuff, should be paid up in front? And I'm bringing this up as an item because I think we're going to be dealing with a lot more of electronic gadgetry up on buildings and roofs and buildings, and to protect the beauty of our city. Does it make any more sense to put a security deposit up front versus hoping that we are able to get them to do it at the end when they may not be around?
I think, Councilmember Royce, the reason that wasn't put in this particular document is this is strictly a 6-month test, and that the assumption is that if the test is successful, that the vendor will come back and we will come back to you at the end of that period and come up with what we're calling a model agreement. And in the model agreement, that language that you described is in fact in there. In fact, we've given the vendor 2 choices, really. One is to post a deposit. The other is to come up with an agreement with PG&E or another party where they would remove the items. We think either would be acceptable.
Okay.
And I guess the other comment I would make is the 90-day removal language is pretty standard. Actually, this document that you're looking at, in fact, as our legal counsel, Mr. Rubens, could testify, actually started out its life as a agreement with AT&T for the so-called Project Lightspeed project. And they're still haggling with us, in fact, about that very clause. But we were able to reach agreement with the Cisco and Covad folks on this language. And so we're moving ahead with that template and this one. And presumably in the future, we'll move ahead with AT&T on something similar.
Well, thank you very much. So keep us, if we do sign a deal, make sure we keep our city clean.
Oh, yeah, we will definitely do that. I should also mention, by the way, that Lee Capozzi, who's the general manager of Covad Wireless, and Eric Dentler from Cisco Systems are both here tonight, so if you have specific questions for Covad or Cisco, they'd be happy to entertain those as well.
Not that we weren't scintillating. Thank you for muscling through the meeting tonight. And with the irksation aside, is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve item 8H.
Second.
Councilmember Ahmad?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Royce?
Yes.
Mayor Lewis?
Yes. Staff, anything else tonight? Okay. With that, we will adjourn the June 23rd meeting. Thank you very much.